as you can see, we're in the from data to decisions talk for the day, and we'll let Ryan start. Never fails. This is how we have to just do projects.
Yeah, exactly. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining today. My name is Ryan Mackay, and I'm here on behalf of Talent 3 Business Solutions. The session is called From Data to Decisions because that's a phrase that really captures the challenge that many institutions are facing right now. Most colleges and universities don't have a shortage of data. They have classroom data, asset data, ticket data, scheduling data, even purchasing, assessment, and increasingly faculty engagement data. The challenge is that this data is often spread across different systems, different teams, different spreadsheets, and different processes. So even though the data exists, it's not always usable, it's not always trusted, and it's not always connected to the decisions that AV, IT, and academic leadership teams need to make. That's the problem that Learning Space Manager was created to help solve. LSM is designed to give institutions a structured, centralized, and operationally useful view of their learning spaces. It brings together information about rooms, assets, equipment standards, life cycle status, service history, assessments, vendors, learning space types, and faculty-facing room information through our Learning Space Profiles Plus. The purpose is not just to store information. The purpose is to help institutions make better decisions with that information. Today I want to walk you through several common challenges we see in higher education learning space management. And for each one, I want to show how a platform like LSM can help shift the conversation from reactive problem solving to proactive institutional planning. So the main question for today is, how do we move from having learning space data to actually using that data to improve outcomes? When we speak to institutions, there are a few pain points that come up repeatedly. The first is reactive firefighting. AV and learning space teams are often forced to respond to issues only after something has gone wrong. A faculty member walks into a room, the system doesn't behave as expected, a class is interrupted, a ticket is created, and the team reacts. The issue is not that the team is doing anything wrong. The issue is that without consolidated operational data, it's extremely difficult to identify risk before it becomes disruption. This is where LSM changes the operating model. Instead of only seeing problems after they're reported, LSM helps institutions connect room data, asset data, end-of-life data, assessments, and service information, so teams can start seeing where the risk is building. The second pain point is budget justification. Many AV leaders know which rooms need attention. They know what buildings are fragile and what technologies are aging. But when it comes time to request funding, leadership often needs more than intuition. They need evidence. They need to know what needs to be replaced, why it matters, what the risk and cost exposure are, and what happens if the institution waits. LSM gives institutions the ability to support those conversations with structured lifecycle and asset data. The third pain point is fragmented inventory and poor lifecycle tracking. Many institutions still rely on spreadsheets, departmental records, tribal knowledge, or one-off systems to understand what they own and where it lives. This creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates operational drag. LSM helps create a single source of truth for learning spaces and the assets within them. That centralized structure is what makes the rest of the decisions possible. How many of you feel fully confident that your institution has a complete and current view of every major AV asset across your learning space? That's usually where the conversation begins. Because if you can't trust the baseline, it becomes very difficult to manage strategically. There are a few themes that will come up throughout the presentation. The first is data as a strategic asset. For learning spaces, that means your data about rooms, equipment, incidents, assessments, standards, and faculty engagement is not just admin information. It's intelligence. It can inform capital planning, staffing, refresh cycles, standardization, risk management, and institutional priorities. The second theme is the true cost of poor learning space management. When institutions don't have reliable data, the cost can show up in many ways. You have emergency replacements, a lot of avoidable support calls, inconsistent room experiences, inefficient purchasing, duplicated effort, and frustrated faculty. The third theme is operational efficiency. A lot of teams spend time collecting, cleaning, reconciling, and building information, and that's necessary work, but it's not where the real value is. The value comes when institutions can move from maintaining data to using data. That's where LSM is especially important. It gives institutions a structured way to govern key data elements like locations, assets, make and model information, their vendors, purchase dates, location types and standards, and even custom institutional fields. The final theme is moving from reactive to proactive. A data-driven institution should not only understand what failed last semester, it should also be able to anticipate what's likely to become a problem next semester, next year, and beyond. What I want to do now is walk you through a set of practical examples. Each one starts with a common institutional problem. Then we'll look at what happens when that problem is managed without reliable data. Then we'll look at how LSM helps create the data structure and operational intelligence needed to make better decisions. So the first problem is one of the biggest. It's capital planning and refresh justification. Most institutions know that some portion of their classroom technology is aging. The challenge is knowing exactly where to start. Without end-of-life data, budget requests often rely on guesswork, anecdotal complaints, or the rooms that have been the most visible politically. That creates a few problems. First, administrators may question the request because there's not enough evidence behind it. Second, rooms that are actually high risk may be missed because they're not the ones generating the most noise. And third, institutions may end up spending reactively when equipment fails unexpectedly. LSM addresses this by helping institutions build end-of-life intelligence into their learning space management process. Within LSM, assets are not just listed as inventory. They can be tied to locations, purchase dates, expected life cycle, asset type standards, and vendor information, and expected replacement costs. That means institutions can see what is currently at or past end of life. They can also forecast what will become end of life in the future. That future view is incredibly important. It allows teams to look ahead 5, 10, or even 30 years ahead and prepare capital plans before the need becomes an emergency. LSM also supports standardization in the refresh process. Instead of replacing equipment room by room with inconsistent decisions, institutions can align replacements to approved standards. It creates long-term benefits. You have fewer platforms to support, stronger vendor relationships, simplified maintenance and better pricing opportunities, and a more consistent classroom experience for faculty and students. The impact for the institution is that budget conversations become much stronger. Instead of saying, we believe these rooms need upgrades, the institution can say, here's the life cycle data. Here are the rooms at greatest risk. Here's the estimated cost, and here's the modernization plan. And here's the impact if we delay. That's a very different conversation with finance and leadership. And this is where LSM moves from being an inventory system to becoming a capital planning tool. In the example shown on screen, the data allow the institution to move from a general concern about aging equipment to specific budget plan. Let's say you're told you have $280,000 for upgrades this year. Based on the LSM insights shown on screen, we can develop a clear, structured plan for how we will actually spend this money. That plan will include fully refreshing 3 large classrooms and upgrading specific components in other spaces, like learning space computers and podium standards. What matters here is not just the dollar amount. What matters is that the decision was defensible. The institution can identify which rooms need to be prioritized, what equipment needs to be changed, and what the part cost would be, what labor costs would be, and what the contingency should be. That's the impact of structured learning space data. It turns a refresh conversation into a capital plan. The second problem is understanding learning space performance. Most institutions have service data somewhere. They have tickets, incident records, support requests, and maybe even severity information. But the real question is that data being used to understand how the spaces are actually performing? Without performance data, institutions struggle to distinguish between isolated incidents and chronic problems. A room may generate repeated failures over time, but unless that data is connected back to the room, the asset, the building, and the support category, it can be difficult to see the pattern. LSM helps by connecting operational support activity to the actual spaces where those issues occur. That means teams can begin ranking rooms and buildings by frequency, severity, and category of incidents. This is important because not all incidents are equal. A one-time cable issue is very different from a room that has repeated equipment problems. LSM helps institutions ask better questions. Which rooms are generating the most support demand? What buildings represent the great operational burden? Which issue categories are recurring? Are problems increasing year over year? Are incident patterns connected to aging assets? Are certain room types performing worse than others? Once those questions can be answered, the support model changes. Instead of waiting for the next class disruption, teams can proactively inspect high-risk rooms. They can strengthen their pre-semester readiness processes. They can investigate recurring root causes, use incident trends to justify modernization. They can align staffing and coverage to actual operational demand. It's a major impact for institutions because it shifts AV support from reactive ticket response to proactive service improvement. How many of you have rooms on campus that your team already knows are problem rooms? That knowledge is valuable, but LSM helps convert that knowledge into measurable operational evidence. In the example shown, the data showed that many incidents were not isolated AV failures. They were recurring operational issues. The main building generated roughly 1/3 of all incidents during peak months, which immediately identifies it as a high-risk area. Equipment reset incidents were consistently one of the highest ticket categories, suggesting systemic instability tied to aging equipment, firmware, control systems. There were also training-related tickets, which suggests inconsistent room experiences and technology workflows. And semester startup spikes pointed to an opportunity to improve room readiness before classes began. Those insights enabled very specific decisions. Prioritize modernization in the main building. Investigate recurring reset and equipment failure incidents. Realign staffing based on the actual incident volume. Strengthen the pre-semester readiness inspections. Audit your firmware and control systems. And deploy room-specific faculty training. That's the difference between reporting tickets and managing performance. LSM helps institutions turn support data into operational strategy. The third problem is learning space classification. It's an area that seems simple at first, but it has major operational implications. Many institutions have broad room labels like a standard classroom, lecture hall, seminar room, or hybrid room. When you look more closely, rooms with the same label often behave very differently. They may have different equipment, different control systems, different capabilities, different support requirements. Without a clear learning space type, every room ends up being managed individually. That creates inefficiency, and it also makes standardization much harder. LSM helps institutions classify your learning spaces based on the actual room design, technology configuration, teaching use case, and institutional standards. That means institutions can understand their portfolio in a more strategic way. They can know how many auditorium spaces they have, how many hybrid large classrooms, how many traditional small classrooms or flex spaces, and how each type of room is actually performing. Once these space types are clearly defined, institutions can begin creating repeatable design templates. That's where LSM has significant institutional impact. Room types can be connected to a standard list of equipment expected capabilities, support requirements, life cycle plans, assessment criteria, and procurement strategies. This allows the institution to stop treating every room as a one-off project. Instead, it can manage spaces as part of a broader portfolio. It creates consistency for faculty, it simplifies support for technicians, it improves procurement planning, and it gives leadership a much clearer view of what types of spaces exist across campus. In the example on screen, the data showed that many classrooms labeled as standard classrooms were likely not standardized at all. That's an important insight, because if rooms are assumed to be the same but are actually different, the institution may be underestimating support complexity. That variation can lead to more support tickets, faculty confusion, and more inconsistent teaching experiences. The decisions enabled by this data right here are very practical. The institution can identify its true learning space types, determine what room designs generate the most incidents, develop repeatable AV standards, prioritize modernization by the room type, and reduce unnecessary variation across campus. This is another example of LSM helping institutions move from individual room management to portfolio-level learning space strategy. The fourth problem is asset type management. This is one of the clearest examples of how fragmented data creates operational cost. Without asset type management, every repair can require a different spare part, different technician skill set, different vendor relationship, or different troubleshooting process. The result is equipment chaos at scale. One example I like using is projector models. An institution may discover that it has dozens of different projector models across campus. That usually didn't happen because someone intentionally designed it that way. It happened because purchasing, their standards, inventory, and governance were not all connected. LSM addresses this through a centralized asset type catalog. Instead of only knowing that a projector exists in a room, LSM helps institutions understand the make, model, category, quantity, location, standard alignment, life cycle status, and all other key information about the room. It's very powerful because now the institution can see patterns across the full portfolio. For example, how many projector models do we support? Which models are discontinued and which are nearing end of life? Which equipment categories are the most fragmented? And where can we consolidate platforms? And what standards should guide our future purchasing? That creates a standardization roadmap. The institution can move from 75 projector models down to a smaller number of approved standards. The impact is significant. Faster repairs, simpler technician training, fewer spare parts, stronger procurement leverage, a simpler warranty management, and a more consistent user experience. This is why I would describe excessive asset variation as not just a purchasing issue. At its root, it's a data and governance issue. LSM gives institutions the visibility and structure needed to fix it. The example on screen here, you can see the data showed significant platform and equipment variation across learning spaces. A large portion of the technology inventory included discontinued or aging equipment. Core AV systems lack consistent standardization, and excessive asset diversity was increasing the support complexity, training requirements, and troubleshooting time. Once LSM surfaces that information, institutions can make more strategic decisions, can consolidate, it can reduce unnecessary variation, prioritize discontinued and end-of-life equipment replacement, negotiate better purchasing agreements and bulk discounts, simplify your technician training, and improve preventative maintenance. It's a very tangible institutional impact. LSM helps reduce operational complexity while improving reliability and long-term cost control. The fifth problem is structured assessments. Learning spaces often degrade gradually. A touch panel becomes unreliable, and maybe a projector image gets dimmer, or microphone's inconsistent. Room images become outdated, furniture, cabling, signage, and documentation begin to drift away from the intended standard. If there's no structured assessment process, those issues often remain invisible until they become classroom disruptions. LSM helps institutions create and manage structured assessments for learning spaces. That can include pre-semester readiness or maintenance checks, LSRS-style scoring, room condition reviews, technology verification, and custom assessments. The key is consistency. Instead of technicians informally checking rooms in different ways, LSM allows institutions to standardize the assessment process. It creates measurable data. Institutions can track which rooms have been assessed and what issues were found, which categories failed most often, and what spaces are ready for the semester, which require follow-up, and how the room quality actually changes over time. It has a major impact. It reduces preventable failures, improves readiness before semester starts, it creates an evidence trail for maintenance and investment, and it helps shift teams from emergency response to planned improvement. A learning space that has never been assessed has never truly been managed. LSM gives institutions a practical way to manage that process at scale. In the example from the deck, assessment data showed that regular pre-semester inspections were identifying recurring classroom issues before they disrupted teaching and learning. The data also showed inconsistent AV configurations and room features, which created uneven support requirements. Preventative maintenance gaps were being exposed across projection, audio, control, microphone, and room readiness systems, and several features were marked not applicable, which highlighted significant variation in room capabilities across campus. That data enabled several important decisions: prioritizing replacement of aging systems, standardizing the technology and workflows, requiring validated testing before classes begin, expanding preventative maintenance around projector runtimes and filters, and improving the room documentation and online room information. The institutional impact is clear. LSM helps teams identify issues before they become failures, document improvement needs, and continuously improve classroom readiness. The sixth problem is the faculty experience. This is where LSM connects operational management to the end user experience through LSP+. Many faculty members are assigned classrooms without a clear understanding of what technology is available, how the room works, or what teaching approaches the space can support. That creates uncertainty. It can waste class time, and it can increase support calls. And it can cause powerful learning space capabilities to go unused. This is especially important for hybrid rooms, flex spaces, and technology-rich classrooms. LSP Plus helps solve this by creating faculty-friendly digital profiles for learning spaces. These profiles can show room capabilities, equipment information, photos, training resources, support information, and simplified explanations. Thank you. And simplified explanations of how the room can be used. The goal is to give faculty a digital window into the room before they ever walk into it. But there's another important layer here. Faculty interaction with these profiles creates data. Institutions can begin understanding what rooms faculty view the most, which capabilities generate the most interest, where help content is actually being accessed, what technologies faculty care about the most, and where feedback or ratings suggest improvement opportunities. This is extremely valuable because it brings the faculty voice into learning space planning. Instead of guessing what the faculty need, institutions can collect structured insight from actual faculty behavior and feedback. That helps AV teams improve documentation, prioritize training, understand the demand for certain capabilities, and make better modernization decisions. The impact is both operational and instructional. Faculty are better prepared, and support teams receive fewer repetitive questions. Technology investments are better utilized, and institutions gain a clearer view of how learning spaces are experienced by the people teaching in them. In the example from the deck, faculty interaction data showed that interest was concentrated in a small amount of rooms. That immediately creates a planning insight. If certain rooms receive much higher engagement, those spaces may deserve priority for inspections, readiness checks, documentation, and refresh planning. The data also showed that the instructor computer hardware was the strongest capability signal. That tells an institution that the instructor workstation reliability is a core teaching continuity priority. Web conferencing ranked highly as well, which reinforces the ongoing importance of hybrid-ready teaching spaces. Help-related activity was also meaningful, showing that faculty are actively seeking guidance. creates a clear decision. Improve the self-service documentation, quick start guides, and targeted training for common room workflows. Finally, advanced capabilities like assistive listening, document cameras, and dual projectors showed comparatively lower interest. That doesn't mean they're not important, but it does mean their expansion should be driven by accessibility, compliance, or demonstrated need. It's a great example of how LSP Plus turns faculty engagement into planning intelligence. The institution is no longer guessing what the faculty actually care about. It has data to guide the communication, training, support, and investment. The seventh problem is managing without a dashboard. Without consolidated visibility, AV managers often report by exception. In other words, leadership hears about the rooms that fail, the complaints that escalate, or the projects that become urgent, but they may not have a complete view of the overall portfolio. They might not know what buildings generate the most incidents, or what rooms carry the highest risk, or what percentage of rooms are fully end of life, and what the actual financial exposure of that is. The institution, The institution also had several high severity and long-running incidents unresolved. That matters because unresolved incidents create continued risk to teaching and learning. The recommended decisions were very specific. Prioritize modernization and preventative maintenance in high incident buildings. Launch root cause investigations for recurring incident categories. Accelerate replacement planning for unstable AV infrastructure. Improve the operational governance and use ongoing data trends to support budgeting and lifecycle planning. This is the value of LSM dashboards and reporting. They help institutions identify where to act, why it matters, and how to justify the next step. The final example is risk management. This is where all the previous data becomes even more strategic. In many institutions, AV risk management is informal. Teams know where the risks are, but those risks are not always documented, scored, tracked, or reported. Examples might include a large percentage of projectors being end of life. You might know that, but it might not be tracked. A high-profile room with no real redundancy plan. Dependency on a single vendor or contractor. A chronic incident room that never receives formal review. Or infrastructure changes that affect AV without enough planning. LSM helps institutions move towards more formal risk management model. Using data like end-of-life status, incident frequency, asset age, space criticality, assessment results, and faculty usage, institutions can begin identifying risks before they become disruptions. That creates what I would describe as a living risk register for learning spaces. Each risk can be documented with the affected location, the assets involved, the likelihood of disruption, potential impact, mitigation plan, the responsible team, and the status of corrective action. Now the institution is not just responding to problems, it's actively managing risk. And that creates a stronger leadership conversation. Because AV teams can say, here are the risks we're tracking, here's the data behind them, here's our mitigation plan, and here's the investment required to reduce institutional exposure. Risk management is not about predicting the future. It's about using the data you already have so that you're not caught unprepared. I want to close by coming back to the larger question. What does it actually mean to become a data-driven learning space organization? The first fundamental is data governance. This means having clear ownership, standard definitions, controlled values, and a consistent process for managing important data. In LSM, this applies to areas like vendor names, make and model information, price information, purchase dates, end of life, location types, assessments, and custom fields. Governance matters because if people don't trust the data, they won't use it to make decisions. The second fundamental is integration and centralization. Institutions already have important systems of record. Facilities may own the location data, ticketing systems may have the incident data, scheduling systems may have room usage data, and monitoring systems may provide operational insights. The opportunity is to bring that data together in a way that supports learning space management decisions. That is a key role for LSM. Gives institutions a place to consolidate and structure learning space information so it becomes operationally useful. The third fundamental is data literacy. People need to understand how to interpret and use the data. A dashboard alone is not enough. Teams need a culture where data informs planning, support, budgeting, and continuous improvement. The fourth fundamental is moving from historical data to predictive planning. A lot of institutional reporting is backward looking. What failed last month? How many tickets did we close? What was replaced last year? That information is valuable, but LSM also helps institutions look forward. What assets are approaching end of life? What rooms are becoming higher risk? What refresh costs are actually coming? What standards should guide that future investment? And where is operational pressure increasing? The final fundamental is a strategic alignment. Learning space data should connect to institutional goals. That might include faculty satisfaction, the student experience, accessibility, budget accountability, standardization, and teaching innovation. That's the real value of Learning Space Manager. It helps institutions move beyond fragmented operational data and toward a more strategic, evidence-based approach to managing learning spaces. The institution that will manage learning spaces most effectively over the next decade will not necessarily be the ones with the largest budgets. They'll be the institutions that can best connect their data to their decisions. And that's the shift this presentation is really about, from data to decisions. I'll pause there. Thank you all for joining. I'll take any questions about the presentation now. I hope you all enjoyed. Yes.
You talked about instructor focus. So there's a way to create a dashboard for them to see the rooms themselves? Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll pull up our LSM platform. I'll get to showcase a little bit. Just get that up here. Perfect. So this is our back-end system. These are some of the dashboards that I talked about with the presentation. The question was about what faculty will see. So faculty members will see a page that looks like this. It's a lot more, it's better looking page and a lot more marketing friendly to them. They can actually see profiles for all their spaces. So I'll pull up an example one. Here's the pilot room that we have. So faculty can see some more marketing related images. They could actually virtually visit the room. They could have a 360 degree, see where they're teaching tomorrow and what the room can actually do. The real power is down below here. This is where that training content comes in. So faculty can see, not make model information, but the actual pedagogy value of the asset, what they care about. They care that they have a projector. Most faculty don't know what brand of projectors in the room, they just care that they have one. That's where this training content comes in. You could attach videos, you could do PDFs, have a video embedded in here with some text. You could do HTML content. Any training content that you have can be uploaded. When it's attached to the asset, it follows it around. So if you move something from one room to another, these pages are all automatically generated. You never have to update them. As long as your team does its job in the back end, managing your spaces, all of these pages will always be up to date.
Thank you.
Yep.
There's a lot of moving parts here for systems that kind of already exist. Like as an example, we use 25 Live. What kind of integration is there with that and systems like Jira to log ticketing, or is this like you start this as a manual process and then it's another system that you're maintaining?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'll start off with the 25 Live. 25 Live integrates with our LSP Plus, so you can actually see the room schedule. I don't have it loaded in this demo instance, but it would be just like the block here, success stories, for example. There would be a block that shows the room schedule. All these pages are configurable to how you want, so you could reorder them. It's a full website builder, so it's very easy to use and intuitive. In terms of ticketing, we do support ticketing integrations. We have, I know for a fact, ServiceNow and Team Dynamics. I don't know about Jira, I could check about that. But the idea there is, I know a lot of AV teams are required to use a certain ticketing system that sometimes they don't like or prefer to get the insights out of LSM. So there's a few ways for the integration. One of them is, like, some schools aren't allowed to even integrate the platforms. They just export all their incidents at the end of the month, upload them into LSM and get the reports. We also do support one-way and two-way integration. You'd have to know, obviously, more details about how your existing system's set up. But it can be set up where you can make edits in either your existing system or LSM, and they actively represent each other on both platforms. So integrations are there. When you first get started, all of your importing of all your data is done by us. It's included 40 hours of onboarding and training support. So you give us your data as is. A lot of schools don't have a full idea of their current space information. So we help you build that out, and then we spend 40 hours making sure that you know how to use the platform and you get the most value out of it.
Eric, I could tell you, we have this, and we have 25 Live as well. The cool part about when we implement 25 Live to it, you don't have to log into 25 Live. So sometimes you have two dashboards, so you have your login for this and your login for that. The login is already tied through our login instance of this.
Gotcha.
So I don't know if my guy did it or if Frank did it, but we were able to set it up that if we make a change in 25 Live, it reflects into this almost immediately. So that was cool. And then you were talking about the tickets. Team Dynamics we have as well. And we're working on getting our hooks tied into that because we're actually changing the Salesforce for some darn reason.
Yeah.
And Frank was saying that that's one of the ones that are on your roadmap for Salesforce.
Yeah.
So, but it does tie in really, really quick. And all those photos that he had there at the beginning, like all this, on ours, they pulled that data right from our website.
Yeah.
And it instantly went to it. So the first time that we had our meeting with them, they had all of our data was already on there, and it just pulled it immediately from our website. It was really slick.
Are you using this as the front end for your instructors now?
Not yet.
Okay.
We're finishing our full upload. We've realized that our campus is bigger than we thought it was. And thankfully for this, because we were finding rooms that we didn't even know existed, because we did a building by building, room by audit. And we were like, oh, this went under construction, and no one ever updated the line drawings. So there were rooms that didn't exist. We had to tell our construction team to update their drawings. And we're like, hey, do you remember this classroom was here? And it wasn't even listed in 25 Live. The registrar didn't even know the classroom existed. It was literally as dust on the chairs. So, yeah.
And it's that kind of stuff that makes something like this attractive, because we're a very legacy campus. It's really the haves and have-nots. We don't even manage all of the space. It's an academic academic hospital, just for context, which is a much different monster than Norman University. And it's really the faculty portion of like them being able to access this is far from my mind. Even getting them to like follow normal directions is enough. But just like the overall asset management, the proactive planning from all of the data is like really the pieces that.
Yeah, I'll pull up that same classroom, like the view on the back end of what you would actually see. Obviously, it's going to be very different from what a faculty member is going to see. So that same room would look like this for you. You'd still be able to see a picture of the room for remote designing. You'd get a detailed list of everything in the room.
Yeah.
And every property that you want to track is here. Price, purchase date, end of life, warranty, serial, you name it. If there's something not here, you can add it in. It's all customizable and included with your onboarding. We'll set it up for what you want to track. So everything's in here, and it's got all the room information too. So even like dimensions, facilities info. It's got all the properties. You could have, does it have outlets at all the seats? Does it have natural light, floor grades, all that kind of stuff? Any attachments, anything related to the room can be stored here. It's one source of truth. So for example, it was an old design doc from when the room was first built. But you could some people put purchase orders and invoices. You have people that like drop code lines in here and stuff. Anything can go in here. And then you see all your assessments, like I described in the presentation. And so this is really the back end of that specific location that you would see compared to what faculty would.
Yeah, this would be more of a tool for us. Dropping more faculty is not much desire. But yeah, thank you for that. Answers our question.
No problem. Any other- yes?
So once you've got all of the assets in here and everything, is it exportable into a PDF
Yes.
document or something so you can do a report?
Yes, it is. Everything's exportable, definitely CSV. Most
Okay.
are PDF, I'm not sure every single one, but everything is CSV
Well, if it comes
exportable
out
every
in
page,
CSV, you
yeah.
can make
Yeah,
it a
exactly,
PDF,
yeah.
so-
That's how we do it. We go CSV first and then PDF.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Is this licensed by number of objects or rooms or facilities, or is it?
So there's two parts to it. I touched on Learning Space Manager and Learning Space Profiles Plus today. LSM is gonna be the back end, is what's on screen right now. There's a base subscription, you get 10 user licenses, unlimited spaces, unlimited storage, all that included in that base subscription, which is roughly 10,000. And then as you increase your user count, the users decrease in price. We have different categories for it. LSP Plus, all of the back-end users always have access to it. So like Frank, for example, said he was building it out, his whole team has access to it. Once he's ready to go live with LSP Plus, then it's by the number of spaces, and we have 3 tiers for that. So it's just depending on how many spaces you'd have, that each tier would be.
We have the ability for, so we have a distributed system across the state, the entire state of Utah. So does it give the ability for our remote hands or people in those locations to update at?
As long as you're on the same network.
As long as you're on the same network. I'm not sure.
As long as your remote campuses are sharing your network. So, for instance, like our medical school campus, we have a 7 miles from campus, but it's a dedicated fiber line to it. And all of our ACE accounts and all of our logins are controlled by our network team at both locations, main campus and the other campus. And we share that network.
Okay.
So it's basically a website. It doesn't really matter.
Awesome. Anyone else? Sounds good. Well, thank you for joining. I appreciate it. If you have any other questions, feel free. I'll be here the rest of the day, so come ask me. I hope you all enjoyed it.